Our passage is from Colossians chapter 2, verse 20 through chapter 3, verse 4. I've titled this talk, Christ is Your Life. I'm 14 years old, in the back of the family car, and we're lost in the heart of Boston, on our way to watch my dad's beloved baseball team, the Boston Red Sox. The police officer my parents stopped to ask for directions said, "Just go straight down this road, make a left on Boylston Street, and that'll take you right to Fenway Park." What we discovered, at least from our perspective, was that their definition of going straight was something completely different than ours. We were following a road that seemed to take us in the opposite direction, going the long way around through twisting and winding streets. After an attempt to turn into a one-way street, another police officer suggested we follow him. Through the use of his bullhorn on the top of his car, he was able to direct us safely to our location. What looks like the shortest way is often impossible, and sometimes the correct way seems like the longest and hardest way to where we want to end up. In our passage, Paul is warning the Colossians not to be drawn into Judaism as those in Galatia were. But he also wants them to understand more than just the negative. He wants them to know the way to a genuine Christ-like life isn't what might seem like the shortest and most obvious route. What is needed is keeping Jesus central in our lives, to follow him, for he is the way to our desired destination. Our passage begins in verse 20. Since you died with Christ to the elemental spiritual forces of this world, why, as though you still belong to the world, do you submit to its rules? Do not handle, do not taste, do not touch. These rules, which have to do with things that are all destined to perish with use, are based on merely human commands and teachings. In the murky and immoral world of paganism, Judaism had a certain appeal because of its high moral code. It made heavy demands, and often, as people experience the consequences of this type of life, they welcome a way of life that offers crisp, clean, and sharp edges. Serious-minded people in a place like Colossae might feel the regulations of the Torah and the teachings encompassed by first century Judaism might be a great help to them. These details like do not handle this, do not taste that, do not touch this, along with the serious commitment needed to keep them, seem to provide tangible markers that showed they were really making progress in their spiritual lives. This is just an illusion, says Paul. If you choose to go that way, you're going the wrong way and will not end up at your desired destination. Paul saw the gospel of Jesus was growing and bearing fruit because lives were changed from the inside out, not the other way around. He heard of their faith, this growing confidence in Jesus that prompted them to follow where he would lead. Their love, a life that willed the good of those around them, even towards those who were different from themselves, and a life of hope lies filled with joyous anticipation of good because of the goodness in God that they came to know through Jesus Christ. Paul goes on in verse 23, such regulations have an appearance of wisdom with their self-imposed worship, their false humility, and their harsh treatment of the body, but they lack any value in restraining sensual indulgence. Jesus says during his talk on the hill that one's righteousness needs to surpass that of the scribe and the Pharisee. See, the righteousness of the Pharisee is one focused exclusively on external conformity to the law, but one that doesn't touch the heart. It's a righteousness that says, I didn't do anything wrong. But we need to begin to ask the question, did I do anything right? If you want to do business with God, you have to go beyond that. Judaism may have an appearance of wisdom in what it comes up with, but it will not lead you to the goal. It will not make you Christ-like. It won't change you from the inside out. You need a new life. You need a new birth. You need to die and be raised. Earlier in this letter, Paul talks about the rescue mission that the Father enacted. He says that he brought us out of the domain of darkness with its rules, its way of thinking and acting, this life without hope and without God in the world. And he has transferred us into the kingdom of his beloved Son. How did he do this? Colossians 3 verse 1 says, "Since then you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. For you are dead, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory." The longer route is an aspect of Christianity that is not only not well known, but is often sneered at. Times, Paul says that we're supposed to be heavenly minded. Set your heart on things above. Set your mind on things above. We're to set our attention, our focus, our thoughts, our affections on the things of heaven. You know, the way we use language, the whole idea of being heavenly minded is a pretty unattractive idea. The phrase that comes to mind, the one I hear a lot, is that of being down to earth or having your feet on the ground. That's positive, right? To have your feet on the ground, to be a down to earth person, everyone says that's a good thing. That's a good person. Having your feet on the ground means you're in touch. You know about real life and you understand how things really work. What does it mean to be a heavenly minded person? We don't use that term much, but there is a phrase that says that a group of people is so heavenly minded, they're no earthly good. See, we see heavenly minded people as those who are out of touch. Their minds are on these lofty ideals, those deep thoughts, and this leaves them unable to engage with life as it is. But that's not true. That's not true for those who are in the world, but not of the world. Not at all. Let's be clear that the most heavenly minded people, truly understood, are the most earthly good. They're the people who are able to live with the most freedom. They don't get bitter even when things happen to them. They don't get worried even when circumstances get overwhelming. They move about in the world with freedom and power. As we seek to wrap this talk up, I want to try to answer two questions. Why is this important? What's the need to be heavenly minded? And then how do you do it? The practice of being heavenly minded. So going to the first one, why is it important? It matters because, as Paul says, Christians should live as if they've died and gone to heaven and come back. Christians are people, when they are here, who live with their minds seeing the great things. We live at this intersection of the visible and the invisible worlds. We are those who by faith get our imaginations captured by that greater world. And to the degree that we allow our imaginations to be captured by the beauty of the one who is beyond bearing, the one who died for you and for me, by those incredible realities, to that degree you will be able to move about this life with freedom and with power. Second thing is, how do we do it? How do we practice to be heavenly minded? Setting your minds on things above has two components. There's a negative and a positive, and you need both. In verse 2, we see what those negative things are, earthly things. Paul says that you must stop putting your heart, your mind, focusing on earthly things. The idea of setting your mind on heavenly things seems nebulous until you realize that you're already setting your mind and your heart on things, but they're down here. So what are they? How am I to do that? verses 2 says, don't set your mind on earthly things, set your mind on heavenly things. And then in verse 4, set your mind on Christ, who is your life. To set your heart and your mind on something is to make it your life. He's saying, don't make anything here your life. Make Jesus your life. And so as we consider these things, we have some diagnostic questions that we need to ask. And so let me just give them to you. What circumstances, what things, what objects, what people, what relationships, if you were to lose them, would make you feel you didn't have a life left? You would feel as if you didn't want to go on. What things do you turn to when things get difficult? What is it that drives you? What is it that you rely on? You see, we have to look at those things. You have to know what they are, or you can't do the positive. So let me encourage you just to take some time to reflect on these items. Now, the positive is to set your mind on things above, to set your mind on Christ, who is your life. Let me tell you how that works for me. When I experience negative emotions, when I get angry, when I get really down, when I'm afraid, when I notice those things, I need to connect the dots. And I need to realize that something else has become my life. And I'm losing it. And it may be something that's really good. But we have to place it, we've placed it as if it were the best thing. Better than God himself. And I'm being controlled by it. And it's got me by the heart. Here's a way that I've found. You look at the thing that you fear that you're losing and you say, you're not my life. Christ is my life. You're a good thing, and I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad to have you. But I don't need you because Christ is my life. I don't need to have this thing to have a life of joy. Christ is my life and my joy. And when you do that, you shoot an arrow right into the heart of that negative emotion. And that narrow arrow is the knowledge that I am a beloved child of God. What more do I need? What more do I really want? As we think about these things, and as we think about becoming those who are heavenly minded, let us see and let us learn how to continually make Christ our life. How to see those things that get in the way of our life and to address them directly, to look them square in the eye and to say that you're not my life. Christ is my life. Well, may you be blessed by these words and may you be blessed by the Lord. Thank you.